Hi, my name is Henrik and welcome to my small makerspace. Over the last couple of years I have created a number of children play cars. This will be a series of videos about the journey, the design, the engineering that has gone into creating the different versions of the play car. In the end, I hope to have realized numerous, robust and mature concepts through heavy testing and many iterations that anyone with some creativity and 3D printers can reproduce, but without the need of a machine shop or advanced tooling.
This whole project started a few years back when my twin girls were about 2 years old, and they were riding bobby cars inside the house, picking up speed over hard floor surfaces, going over thresholds, skidding on the floors and making a very large amount of noise. So I thought that some TPU covers would be handy on the wheels on the bobby cars. So I modeled and printed covers, picture on the screen now, and they worked really well. It took down the noise level a lot and it increased the friction towards the floor, so no more skidding around and leaving skid marks everywhere. And with this I got taste to create something that they could use to play together with. So I modeled this car here. So it's a full play car, slightly larger than a bobby car, intended for a driver and a pusher. Or you could also ride it more like a bobby car and just propel yourself, but being a little bit wider, it was more suited towards playing together. So at the time I had access to a few small printers, and I think the best alternative for me to print this car at the time was the Prusa MK3S. So I decided to use that and had to then split the model in a few parts to be able to fit it in the build volume. The width of this car is roughly 340 millimeters, and the length I remember is around 700 millimeters for the actual body. So the color coded pieces here, they represent the splits made to make it fit into the MK3S, and I think it was about like one day each for each of those pieces. So all in all I probably printed for a good 2 weeks to get all of these parts out. The body was printed out of black PLA, and then I used some PETG for some components here in the front steering assembly and also the rims. The structural components, these black rods here, they represent wooden rods, 27 millimeter, that's just over 1 inch wooden rods, and they are easily available, at least here in Sweden, from build hardware stores. So the pusher interface and the front like wheel and steering assembly rests on the durability of those wooden rods. When I had printed all of these parts and I was going to assemble it, it wasn't as easy and straightforward as I had hoped it to be. In the model, if we look at a transparency view, there are several of these like reinforcement and alignment cavities for strips of some sheet material like plywood or similar. And I used like thin 3mm plywood strips to help join these parts together. I used construction glue, and the fitment wasn't excellent. I had some parts I had to reprint, some warping, some adhesion problems to the build platform. The build was, like, all in all, not as easy as I had hoped. The reinforcement strips also acted like structural components for certain areas of the car. For example, the footrests here being able to take the load of a child jumping on them, for example. The red tires here, they were printed out of TPU, and they had like a slight infill, so they were even softer than the first covers I made for the bobby car, which was only like a solid surface for those wheels. So the ride was even quieter than the bobby cars, which I found to be very satisfying. The wheels had bearings. The axles were 12mm threaded rod, as well as the steering column. And all in all, the system worked fairly well. However, I did some mistakes with the front assembly here. I wanted a certain steering angle to be able to corner well indoors, and ended up running out of space up here in between the wooden rods. So I had to move some steering components down to underneath the car in this area, so the ground clearance ended up being lower than I had hoped or targeted in the beginning. The car worked really well though for running indoors, because the ground clearance wasn't the problem there, and me and my girls, we played a lot with this car in the winter of 21-22, and even though they were pushing each other along now and then, admittedly it was more I that had to push them around more often. I enjoyed it though, and have many good memories from playing with this play car. When spring came and I was going to improve on some things, I decided to make a second iteration, and this one was discontinued, and I started to salvage some components. So that was the end of the life for this version of the car. Now in hindsight, given all the experience I have gained from multiple iterations of play cars, I think it would be worthwhile to revisit this design and make many improvements, and make a new version that would be targeted for the same use case as this one was, for like young children, for indoor use. I like the design. It's quite simple. As you probably can see, it's loosely inspired from something along the lines of an old Willys Jeep. A painting first step in this journey of making ever improved play cars.
And after I had salvaged parts from version 1, I put it outside to see how the elements would affect the filament. So I mentioned that I had some problems when printing all the parts back in 21. That some of them were slightly warped and had some layer adhesion struggles, but this is definitely a lot more than what was the case when the car was first assembled. I also noticed some cracking that has appeared in a few different places back here by the pusher interface as well. The hardware used, there are some like ball links which are very handy, but for the steering spindles only like simple M8 bolts were used with some thread locking to keep them in place, and also these like wheel axles, just threaded rod. And of course the fitment isn't perfect with bearings, and I ended up using a simple solution like just wrapping a few laps of like sturdy tape on top of the axle to get a better fitment with the bearings. And that was enough for this like early concept, but definitely not the solution I would go for today. Yeah, so the weather tests then, like of course there are these increased gaps, but another aspect of that was to investigate if the black PLA would be good enough for an outdoor use car, or would the direct sunlight on warm days be too much for the surfaces and they could just deform from the heat. I couldn't observe that on this car, but those heat cycles might have been what has contributed to the like the gaps and cracks in the construction now. I can't exclude that at least. What I could feel when I just felt these surfaces during what I consider hot days in direct sunlight was that they were softer than they usually are, but I had to like push my thumb firmly to make it deform, and I could probably cause some permanent deformation if I wanted to.
Alright, that was version 1 of the Playcar. If you enjoyed this content, I am certain that you will also find the upcoming episodes interesting, because the Playcars, they only get better with each iteration. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.